My name is James Shillinglaw. I'm editor-in-chief and founder of a fairly new publication called InsiderTravelReport.com. Hopefully you're getting it. If you're not, please go and sign up. We just started in June of last year, but I've been doing this for a bit of time, probably 25 years now. Let me introduce our panel first of all. Immediately to my right is my good friend Rick Barron, who's Managing Director National Accounts for Tauck, the tour operator. Right next to him is Gail Grimmett, who is President of Travel Leaders Luxury Brands. I got that right? Okay. Which is a large luxury travel agency group that's owned by Travel Leaders Group. After her, we have Ted Sykes, who is the President and Chief Operating Officer of American Queen Steamboat Company, which is one of my favorite river cruises. It's a great thing on the Mississippi and elsewhere. And then next to him, we have Ignacio Maza, who is the Executive Vice President, Signature Travel Network. And I believe Ignacio was overseeing all the hotel programs, and now you're overseeing all of luxury sales, I believe. There's a new position. So we're going to be getting into that a little bit. And then after that, we have Navin Sawhney, who is CEO of Americas for Ponant Yacht Cruises and Expeditions, and it's luxury expedition cruises. Anyway, let's get right to it. Let's very quickly let each of you to give us an update on your companies. Rick, let's start with Tauck very quickly.
Morning, everybody, and thanks for having me back, James. It's exciting to be on this panel. Quick question. How many of you in this room know Tauck, by show of hands? So I really don't have to tell you who we are, but I told a story last year that I think bears repeating because it tells you a lot about our company. And back in 1925, when we ran the very first tour, it was 1,100 miles long.
You were there, Rick, right?
Almost. Guess how many miles were paved? 200 miles were paved. 900 miles were on dirt and shale and clay roads. So the question is, why? Well, the reason for that is the reason that we actually exist as a company. Because if we didn't take people off the beaten track to discover the real story of America, of New England, they'd have never seen it. They'd have gone from city to highway and never really dug in to see the authenticity and the beauty of New England. Well, really, we've never stopped doing that. That's what we do today, with a little bit more comfort than a 1925 Studebaker on dirt roads, but we do it around the world on 7 continents, in hundreds of countries, but it's pretty much just the same in terms of our purpose for being.
Of course, it also means hanging on the side of a cliff in the Canadian Rockies on the heli hiking trip, which I went to with Rick, and that was not expected, but was enjoyable, let me tell you, once we got up there. Gail, please tell us all about Travel Leaders Luxury Brands.
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I couldn't be prouder to represent Travel Leaders Luxury Brands. We represent 5 different companies across the Travel Leaders organization. So Pro Travel International, Zell Travel Group, Andrew Harper, Travel Leaders UK, and Colette's International. So here across the US and over in the UK, we have some of the finest best-in-class agents that really represent the top of the luxury industry in terms of knowledge and in terms of service, in ensuring that their clients get high-touch, very unique experiences booking for their luxury travel.
Fantastic. Now, Ted, talk a little bit about American Queen Steamboat Company. You have a new ship, actually.
Yeah, thank you, James. For those of you who don't know us, the American Queen Steamboat Company has been around for about 5 years now. And we started out with the American Queen, which is a large, about a 425 passenger luxury vessel that we operate on primarily the lower Mississippi and the upper Mississippi. And then we run it on the Ohio all the way up to Pittsburgh. And then in 2014, we added the American Empress out on the Columbia and the Snake River, running between Portland and Clarkston. Actually, the air city is Spokane, and that primarily does 1-week trips back and forth. And then we've just, as James mentioned, this 2017 we launched the American Duchess, which is a higher end, lower capacity, 166 passenger all suite vessel, and that one we've got primarily on the lower Mississippi. But yeah, business is great. We're working on another vessel.
Is that news? Can I print that? No.
We've said publicly we own another vessel and we're working on it, but stay tuned for the launch date.
Yeah, and I'm looking for it. I'm going to try it. Go check out American Duchess in March. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, good. We're delighted to have you all on board. Yes, thank you.
Ignacio, tell us about Signature and what you do there now.
Thank you very much for having me, James. I am a member of Signature Travel Network. We are a network of 250 member agencies in the US and overseas. Collectively, we represent about 7,000 travel consultants, generating over $7 billion in travel sales. We have been in business for over 60 years, and we sell travel in all of its facets: cruises, land holidays, safari, adventure, wellness, all different destinations worldwide, and we are very bullish on the luxury travel segment, a business that has grown to over $1 trillion last year. So we're very excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and just as you said that, the next shift came in from the crowd, so we're good. Navin, talk a little bit about Ponant.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here so early and joining us. I don't know how many of you have heard of Ponant, but it's
how many have heard of Ponant
30
before?
Years.
You're good.
That's
here.
wonderful. We've been around 30 years. We began doing business in this country in 1993 with a partner who's sitting at the other end of the table. That's Rick Barron. He not only led the 1925 Tauck tour, but he also was on Le Ponant in 1993 when we forged a partnership here. Today, for the last 4 years, we are proudly expanding our growth in this country because we've expanded our portfolio of beautiful luxury small ship expedition vessels. We have 5 in the water and another 5 under construction. And we are truly the antithesis of what cruising conjures up in the eyes and minds of the audience. We'll share much more with you.
Fantastic. So you got a good mix of products here and travel agency groups. And every year I ask this question because maybe it's changed. How do you define luxury today, luxury travel today? Does it really still revolve around the amenities and products provided, or is it, as we all know, the experiences? And how has that definition changed? Anybody want to start? Sure. Ignacio?
I would argue that the idea of luxury travel has changed more in the last 10 to 15 years than in the previous 100. Mm-hmm. I think before we had a very defined absolute idea of what luxury was. It was a Rolls Royce, it was Cartier, it was certain very specific things. But today, I think luxury is personal, it's individual. Everybody has a different idea of what luxury is. And as travel sellers, the most important thing we have to do is we have to get to know our customer, to understand where are their passions and what are their interests and what is it that will create a sense of wonder. So it is much broader. So that's one great opportunity. The challenge is that how do you create luxury when every customer has a different idea of what it is?
Yeah. I think in this industry, we've learned to basically follow Ignacio's lead. Whenever he speaks, we all say he's right and move on. But in this case, he truly is right.
Because Ignacio has been everywhere in the world to every luxury hotel that I know of, right?
Well, you need to get out more, James.
We all do compared to you, Ignacio.
But truly, he is right because luxury it completely assumes that there's a price of entry and the tangible things that we knew in the past to be luxury are all going to be there, but it goes well beyond that, and it is incredibly personalized. And personalized doesn't just mean salutations and first and last names. It means giving people the freedom to be themselves in the experience, which is the new currency of luxury.
I think there's one thing sorry. No. There's one thing that hasn't changed. And that is luxury has always meant craftsmanship and flawless execution, whether it's a Rolex or whether it's an experience. And really, that's what we focus on at Tauck. We're a bit different than most of the other panelists in the sense that we don't own any hardware. We don't own any hotels, and we don't own any riverboats. So what we do is we manufacture experiences. And so in order to really craft something, it takes time, and on average, I don't think people realize that it takes almost 2 years for us to build one single itinerary. And there are teams of people that do it. It begins with the visionaries. We call them our product development team. And they go out and they look at the world and say, how do I tell the story of that destination? What do I need to tell the story? And then we partner with people like Navin to make sure that we have the best means of transportation and the best means of lodging, wonderful hotels. And then our visionaries turn that kind of idea over to the engineers. Those are our product operations team. And then once that's all put together, then we have to have value. So we've got a whole team of negotiators that go out there and make sure that nobody's overpaying. We pay what we need to pay, but nobody wants to pay too much. And then finally, when that's all done, we actually run it 2 or 3 times empty with our staff to make sure that we have flawless execution. And then we go live with our tour directors, and they become sort of the maestros that go out there and deliver the product and make sure that everything is moving the way it should. Not only with the plan that they have, but plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D, because nothing ever goes completely right the first time. And then we continue to hone it and tweak it until it gets better and better and better and becomes actually a better experience over time rather than getting old.
So you thought luxury was easy. So
No,
Gail, you had...
And that's what I'll add on to that, because as Ignacio says, everything is individualized, but what's really changed as well in terms of the definition of luxury over the last decade versus the last 100 years is that the world is far more global. And so you think about what you considered luxury years ago, and you might have talked about something in London or in Paris because the world wasn't completely open. And now you're talking about going to trek gorillas through Uganda or going on a safari through Africa or whatever the case might be. And you might not have considered years and years ago when you were talking about a luxury vacation that you were going to go camping in a tent. And of course, the definition of what's camping in a tent now versus
glamping.
Yeah, glamping in a tent, right? And so I just think that adds to the complexity, and it adds, quite frankly, it adds to the relevance of the travel agent, because they not only need to understand the individual that they're speaking to in terms of their definition of luxury, but yet keep on top of what all the trends are and what destinations are there and what experiences are there that will suit the needs of the individual person.
Okay, I want to get to Ted, and then we're going to get to Ignacio has something to add here. So Ted?
Yeah, thank you, James. I used to think that luxury was space and amenities and fit and finish and all of the things, that Navin says.
Now it's just sleep, right?
Now to me, luxury is time. It's time, and it's like Rick was saying, it's a seamless experience. It's all the hassles taken out of it. So that's what we try to deliver, is away from the madding crowd.
Yeah, and if you've ever cruised lower Mississippi with nothing around you, that's a lot of time. It's very nice. And Ignacio, you got time?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think that one thing that we all have to keep in mind when we're talking about luxury travel is a sense of authenticity, a sense of place. And I think that travelers are willing to go literally to the ends of the earth, provided that they can have an experience that they won't have anyplace else. I mean, there is nothing that can convey the wonder of being in Antarctica surrounded by thousands and thousands of penguins and absolutely nothing else except the water, the ice, and the wildlife.
Which you just did, right, this past year? Yeah.
Well, I did a long time ago, but believe me, it was very memorable. Or a place like Bhutan, which 20 years ago nobody talked about Bhutan, and today it is one of the most sought after destinations by sophisticated travelers. So I think if there is something at the other end that is special and authentic and true and real, and I'm not going to find any place else, people will gravitate towards that.
Yeah,
just to assure all of you, this is not a collusion. We are the leader in Antarctica as a cruise company, and he keeps teeing these things up beautifully. But I think it underscores a point, and the point is that you cannot deliver luxury without some basics that are very tangible. After you've gone through mud, ice, and penguin droppings, you really do want to come to a spa like Sotheby's on a ship and get yourself refreshed. You do want to use the Hermes amenities and drink Veuve Clicquot champagne and eat Ducasse's food on a ship like ours. People have come to expect that.
Okay,
but
Ted?
well beyond that is a connection with the people you're traveling with. You do want to be around like-minded people, and if you're not, no amount of solace, solitude, serenity, etc., will inspire you. You do need, at the end of the day, to have this be a social experience on and off the tour or ship that you're on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Ted?
And I would underscore what Ignacio said as well. It's about access, it's about authenticity, it's about getting behind the scenes and giving those travelers access to things that they could not themselves otherwise put together. I was on a cruise recently and we had 4 people from Australia, New Zealand, somewhere, and they came back to the boat saying, wow, the price of the experience of the shore excursion was worth the price of the entire cruise, because there was no way they could have come to this country, gone, behind the scenes, had that experience, met those people, and that's the memory they take home.
Absolutely, no. Let's turn to the second question here, and this is one I've asked before again, but who is the luxury traveler today? Who are all those like-minded people? And what customers do you target or do you cater to for your respective companies? Are there different types of luxury customers? Anybody?
Oh gosh, I would
Okay,
think that there's definitely different types of luxury customers. I mean, people used to define luxury as perhaps maybe people who are about to head into retirement or the older set, like my age. But now you look at it and you take a look at as things are evolving. People really, and particularly and I don't like to use the word millennial because the millennials are offended when you use the word millennial.
And there's so many different types of millennials
exactly.
too, as we've learned.
Well, there are, but you know what? I mean, you see that there's such an emphasis and the understanding of how much is out there, that the emphasis that they have on experience over product or anything else, that the beautiful thing about the luxury market is what is now the diversity of the luxury market. And I think that that's really created a wonderful opportunity for both the vendors and suppliers to be able to expand their portfolio of what they can offer, and for our own industry and for the travel agents to be able to become knowledgeable about the different needs and wants, because we all can, like as we continue to say, we can all call it luxury, but the definition of luxury is so different at demographic or age or whatever the case may be.
Or income, obviously.
In income. And so it really, from my standpoint, the beauty of luxury expanding into a now multi-generational effect is significant for every part of the industry.
Yeah.
And this is a really important question, because I think that, common knowledge would tell us that the luxury client is wealthy. But we have clients from all walks of life, and that's not necessarily the case. There are 2 things that our clients have in common, as diverse as they are, and that is that they're highly educated, and they have a real thirst for travel, experiential travel. And so we have people that are school teachers, we have postal workers, we have wealthy people, we have movie stars that travel with us. And some of them, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of their income, but others will save for an entire year. And this is going to be their one big trip, and we better not mess it up.
Yeah.
So when you're looking, if you're an agent out there and you're looking, for luxury clients, don't just look at the purse. Really look at their desire to travel in the style and means that we offer.
Yeah. Ignacio. Yeah.
A couple of things. I think one, I wholeheartedly agree with Gail. The range of consumers that are buying luxury travel experiences today is wider and broader than it has ever been. Our network has a database of about 4.5 million names, and we strive our best to dig into each household and understand their aspirations and their past travel history and where they're interested in going, because it is very much aspirational as opposed to what your wallet can buy. And so you need to think of luxury travel in a very wide range of possibilities. It's everything from a family celebrating their son's graduation from high school to honeymoon to once in a lifetime trip to somebody that has been to India 10 times, whatever it is. And we have to be able to understand that customer and serve it up to them. But it is very much about understanding your customer and pursuing their passions together with them to help them, realize their dreams. I think the consumer today is incredibly sophisticated and well-informed and has more information at their fingertips than ever before. So we have to very much, as travel sellers, collaborate with our clients in the creation of, memorable, meaningful experiences, whether it's a weekend trip to Chicago or it's a 3-week safari journey to Botswana.
Yeah. Ted?
Yeah, James, I would say that, there's something called Sutton's Law, right? When Willie Sutton was asked why he robbed banks, he said, because that's where all the money is. The baby boomer is still far and away our target customer because there are 10,000 people a day turning 60.
I know.
There are, they are more fit. They are, like Rick was saying, there are a huge lot of them that are lifelong learners that want to be engaged. There's a lot of them, talking about frustrations of travel. They may not want to get on a long-haul flight to Europe, but they want all the amenities that Navin and Ignacio are speaking about. They want all of that here, and so that's what we cater to.
Yeah, well, the other thing is luxury travel is, and it's almost an oxymoron to say it's more affordable. Right. There are so many offers out there that you can upgrade from what used to be called a premium experience up to luxury pretty easily.
Right, and on guided tours or on cruise vessels, there's every cabin category. So the price of entry is either, and like Rick says, we have people for whom, they've saved all their life. We have other people who, we have one gentleman who's taken 61 cruises with us.
Yeah, well, I know. I've been on luxury cruises, covering them, and 9 times out of 10, I'll run into, teachers from New York or something that are going, and I don't want to ask, how did you afford this? But and they're on it a lot, so I don't know. It's really
a priority for them.
I could lend a little insight into that. One of the reasons that it works really well for us at Tauck is that we're an all-inclusive, and what that means is it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. When you travel with us, everyone is equal, everyone's a VIP. When that's not the case, then it becomes embarrassing when two families of different income levels sit down to dinner and they both look at the menu. And if one of those families doesn't have, the same means, then they feel like second-class citizens, sort of. But when you don't have to look at the prices on the menu and you don't have to worry about the tipping and you don't have to worry about what it's going to cost you because it's all been prepaid, right? Then everyone can just be equal and focus on actually becoming, a team, a group, and sharing the experiences and seeing things through each other's eyes, and that kind of enhances the experience beyond traveling alone as well.
Yeah. Now, Ignacio, you had something?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think even customers, travelers rather, that think that they cannot afford luxury, believe me, they will be very open to having a couple of days or a luxury experience as part of their journey. Say that they're going to India for 2 weeks and they're watching every nickel, but you might present spending the last few days at the Taj Lake Palace on Lake Udaipur, right, on Lake Pichola in Udaipur, India, which is one of the most extraordinary experiences you can have in life to stay there. So you can add a component of luxury even though you may be, managing your budget the rest of the way. And it's interesting to me that today's, young people that may not be saving for a house or may not be interested in buying a car have no problem spending $250 on dinner because it is a very special chef with a very special menu and you have to wait 3 months to get a reservation. So we have to understand what are the pursuits and the passions of the customer and exceed those expectations.
Yeah. I think one of the important takeaways for all of you should be that it's no longer demography. But let's not kid ourselves. We are in the business. We are doing commerce all of the time. So money does matter, and every experience doesn't cost the same. Whether it's Lake Pichola or going up in the high Arctic or going to some palace somewhere else on a tour or being in the Mississippi, all of these have a cost associated with them. And I think the onus on all of us in this business is to ensure that we intimately understand what the client is desiring, and within that set of desires try to create something that they can't do on their own in the experience. And for example, with Ponant, we may take people up in Greenland and then give them a few fishing poles in one of the places, have them catch something, and actually learn how the natives fed themselves. If they like sashimi, they're welcome to it, but if they like a fire, we'll happily build one. That by itself is a form of luxury. But getting to Greenland is not cheap. So that's where the money component does come into play. And I think the important part for all of us is to make sure we understand the client very well and can build that experience for them that they can't otherwise get.
I was going to say the takeaway for me is all inclusive, because like Rick says, you don't want for the customer, so they're not being nickeled and dimed, or so they're not being compared amongst themselves, but for the agent, because then it's a single transaction, everything's commissionable.
Right.
You're not, it's a much better deal for the agency to sell all inclusives.
But here's what I would say is, because we've spent a lot of time talking about the properties and what happens when you get there, or the experience when you get to the destination. I would argue that luxury actually starts. There's a whole travel ribbon that starts with the agent, right? And it starts with the agent knowing you, and that luxury experience of serving the client is equally as important. Elizabeth Taylor used to be a client of ours, and she loved to stay at the Dorchester. Which is a great property, has great amenities, definitely luxury experience. But the Dorchester repainted their bedrooms and their rooms pink, and she preferred blue. And so our agent called ahead of time and had them repaint the room to blue before she arrived, right? Or we have a client that when
I've tried to do that a few times.
It doesn't work for everybody. You need one of our agents, James.
Yes, that's true. I'm missing that.
You need to come our way. Okay. But I also think, but it even goes to, we have another client who gets to the hotel and prefers to call their agent to call room service for them instead of calling, and it sounds funny, but that's luxury for them, right? And so I would argue that as much thought as you put into your experiences and you put into and as much thought as this whole panel puts into the experience, I would argue that there's a whole travel ribbon that starts with the very beginning of the planning of that trip. Absolutely. And then goes from there.
And Ignacio, I know you've had a few rooms repainted, Ignacio.
Yes, a few. A couple of things I might add is that something that's really important, and it's probably the hardest thing to do in our business as travel sellers, is learning how to say no. Because when you understand your customer and you really have a deep knowledge of your client, you have to have the courage to look at them in the eye and say, this is not for you. You're not going to be happy, and this is why. Mm-hmm. If your customer wants a lot of activity in the lobby and wants Beyonce full blast, they're going to be miserable at the Bristol in Paris, where you're going to come in and it's Beethoven, not Beyonce. So you really have to understand what is it that your clients, they like, and I would argue that even more importantly, you have to understand what are your clients' dislikes, because the more pain we can remove from our customers' travels and the more friction we can relieve, the more valuable we will be to our clients, and they will appreciate us even more. I mean, if you could find me a quiet room in every hotel that I stay at, I will love you forever. But my first question when I arrive at a hotel, and I stayed at one last night, was not, I don't want the view, I just quiet. That's numero uno. If it's one night, I need to be able to get a good night's sleep. I don't want to hear the Mount Sinai ambulance going down 57th Street. So it's all about knowing your client and just having that relationship and giving you the courage to say, this is not for you. I have something that will be a much better match for your travels.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think let's move on to the next question quickly. And this is really, cruises have become really one of the mainstays of luxury travel today, and we have some representatives on this panel. How have high-end cruise lines sort of repositioned themselves today in the market, both for oceans and rivers? I'm going to start with Navin, because he's in a company that really is in the forefront of repositioning luxury as something else, luxury expedition.
Yeah, I think I began by saying we're in many ways the antithesis of what image conjures up in your own minds or your clients' minds when cruising is mentioned to them. At a time when the world was building magnificent large ships with an atrium in the middle, we launched our company with a 3-masted sailing yacht, and that's our flagship today. She sails in Cuba and the Caribbean in the winter and the Mediterranean in the summer. And then we began this decade gloriously by carving out a whole new category. Expeditions have been around for centuries, and it's nothing new to mankind. However, luxury expeditions on small ships is a category that we carved out by launching the Boreal in 2010. And what we assumed was that people will want creature comforts, but very importantly, what they will want is to travel with a shared sense of purpose. And that sense of purpose is to enrich their minds and to inspire their spirits by becoming part of the places they visit. So today we've got 4 ships in Antarctica. This will be our 6th summer this year, doing the Northwest Passage with 2 ships. And we very recently announced building the first luxury icebreaker that is purpose-built. And in all of this, all these new ships are what are called clean ships. And that means we are highly conscious of the fact that the sense of purpose with which people want to travel, with which they want to enrich their minds, with which they want to inspire their spirits, really also ties into their sense of being on this earth. Mankind was totally changed once we saw the Earth rise after the Apollo 8 mission. We saw ourselves and said, I want to save this. And for that reason alone, we've made sure our ships have a clean ship label, which is better than green. And our new luxury icebreaker is going to be a liquefied natural gas propelled vessel.
But that's what's happening all over the place with liquefied natural gas. And this whole trend towards expedition luxury.
Expeditions are all about making sure you change yourself and come back transformed, but don't transform the environment you visited. Mm-hmm. That is a very, very important hallmark of a good expedition, and Ponant respects that.
And Ted, you obviously, the rivers, which, we all remember river cruising back in the 80s and 90s, and it's just evolved so, and your company's been at the forefront here in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, James, if the question is how do cruise lines compete with hotels, absolutely. We've made the cruise vessel as much a destination as, like I always say, we're not in the drayage business. We're not taking people from point A to point B. We're taking them on an experience which is on board the vessel. Right. So we have fine dining, we have entertainment, clean waters. Yes, we live in inland waterways, so nothing goes overboard. I mean, that's a given for us. We live in the zero tolerance world on clean. But then it's like Navin was saying as well, it's all the enrichment. Mm-hmm. It's, to cater to the lifelong learner, so that if it's, we all know that weather is a big influencer on any vacation. So no matter what the weather is, if you have an enrichment, if you have a lecturer, if you have somebody who can explain, like we always say, the America that Americans don't know, the behind the scenes, then that's what keeps them coming back for more. And I would say we've matched hotels point for point on luxury. We have butler service in the owner's suites and the upper suites. We canapes in the afternoon, laundry service for them. I mean, unpack, all of those. We address all of those, just like hotels.
Absolutely. Now, Ignacio, you had
a few things. Going back to your question, how have the cruise lines repositioned themselves? I would say, number one, there's a lot more choice. The experience has been deconstructed. So once upon a time, 20 years ago, you sailed on Royal Viking, you had an assigned table for dinner, breakfast, and lunch. Today, you have a choice of multiple restaurants. You eat when you want, how you want. Everything is delivered the way you want it. Number two is, I think, the cabin, the stateroom product is a lot more lavish. There are a lot more options. Number three, the itineraries are longer. They're different. They're curated. There is a lot more choice. It's not Miami. It's Madagascar. It's not Puerto Rico. It's Port Moresby, New Guinea. I mean, the world is your oyster. And I also think something very interesting is that more and more luxury cruise lines are going the all-inclusive route, as witnessed by my colleagues, but also Silversea and Regent and Crystal, and more this idea that it's one price that includes everything. And also what a very interesting trend, I think, is what's happening in terms of the pre and the post and the excursions that are offered. Silver Sea just rolled out a whole series called Couture Collection, where as part of their journeys, you could be sailing around the Pacific coast of South America, and you have the opportunity to visit the Uyuni Salt Flats, which is one of the most emblematic and special places in South America, as an excursion, as an experience that you add to your cruise. Even though your ship is tied up in the coast of Chile, you are having these incredible experiences and then back on the ship. So I think it's a much broader definition, and the possibilities are almost endless as to what was offered even 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. I would add on to that, because I do think that the whole cruise industry has expanded itself to make itself more relevant to a much broader group of people. And so even when you think of riverboat cruising, you used to think about people that were the older generation going on the riverboat cruises, and now you see riverboat cruises that are geared particularly for people under the age of 30 or people
we just
under
got
the age of
that.
35, right? So
You gotta talk to Ellen two panels down.
exactly. Well, and that's, I think, but that's the point, is as the cruise industry has been incredibly quick, speed to market in terms of really expanding itself to the relevancy of the luxury traveler and the expansion of how they define luxury in each of the different categories.
Okay, Rick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, as a tour operator, our purpose is a little bit different. As I said, it's really to tell the story of the destination, and so really our possibilities are limitless. But it's funny that our biggest areas of growth right now happen to be on water, river, and small ship cruising. And thanks to partnerships with companies like Navin's Ponant, we now have 22 itineraries that are on small ships, but about a third are expedition cruising. So how does a tour operator become a leader in expedition cruising? It really has to do with partnerships and exclusivity. So on all of our expedition cruises, we're now the only partner with BBC Earth. And every single one of our tour directors are now BBC Earth Journey certified guides. And that means that BBC Earth is the #1 storyteller of the world. If you've ever seen any of their stuff, they do most of the filming for National Geo. So not only will you have that experience, but you're going to have exclusive footage from BBC and also gadgets, all the gadgets that BBC uses to film, like underwater pole cameras and things like that, big ears to capture things from a distance. We have those gadgets at our disposal with tour directors who are trained as BBC certified guides to bring that experience even a step further. And that's what we can do as a tour operator. Other ways we can tell the story is by, teaming up with people like Ken Burns, right? America's foremost storyteller. And so we can create experiences that are, again, unique, exclusive, and are a bit more relevant to the destination than something that can be produced off the shelf.
Okay. I want to turn now to an area with that really everybody associates with luxury hotels. And the challenge I see today is that there are so many different brands in the market. I go to the ILTM, International Luxury Travel Market in Cannes, almost every year, and I'm always astounded at what's coming into the pipeline. And I want to start with Ignacio, because Ignacio has been responsible for a long time for selecting those kind of luxury hotels. Ignacio, how do you differentiate between all these different luxury brands and then communicate that to clients?
It's a challenge, no question. There has been such a explosion in terms of the number of brands, and more brands are coming. I think in the last month, Rosewood announced a new brand, and Jumeirah announced a new brand, and there's another brand sort of in the works at Hilton. So you're absolutely right. There is an ocean of brands. But personally, I think that for travel sellers, that's an opportunity, because it enables us to, again, go back to understanding the client, and in a very crowded and confusing field, say, this is the right choice for you. So I think what is important in a luxury hotel, or what should be important, there are some things that are given, obviously service and comfort and reliability and exceeding expectations and all the rest. That's just the baseline. But I think beyond that, number one, you need to focus on dining. The dining has to be an important component. Your restaurant has to be top-notch. There has to be something special about it and authentic, and to have a sense of place. Number two is wellness. I mean, once upon a time, having a little gym in the back of the hotel was nice. Today, people have 20, 30, 40,000 square foot spaces with spa, and wellness is really, really important.
I like to have that gym there, you know, but I got to tell you, I go visit and I write about it, and then I don't think I go there afterwards. But
well,
do you?
I do.
You do?
Yes,
There,
absolutely, religiously. It's the only way to stay on top of this business. I would say the other thing that hotels are doing is they're being more flexible in how they deliver their service. So, for example, I'm a big fan of Ofer Nissenbaum, the general manager at the Peninsula in Beverly Hills, because with Los Angeles and a lot of people traveling from the East Coast, people were arriving early or staying late to catch a late flight. So what he did is, we'll just get rid of the check-in, check-out, and you decide what is check-in, check-out.
Yeah.
So if you arrive early in the morning in Los Angeles, the Peninsula, Beverly Hills will take you right to your room regardless of arrival time. And if you're leaving later in the afternoon and you need the room till 4 or 5 p.m., you can keep it. To me, that is very customer-centric, and a luxury customer spending $700, $800 a night to stay at the Peninsula Beverly Hills will appreciate that the brand is sort of coming up to you. I also like the idea of access that a lot of hotels are pursuing. For instance, the Park Hyatt New York has a partnership with Carnegie Hall, which is literally across the street. So if you're staying at the Park Hyatt and you need to get 2 tickets for a concert at Carnegie Hall, the concierge will have an in with the ticket window at Carnegie Hall, and they will get you in. Or you wanted to do a backstage visit of Carnegie Hall or something special like that. So I think it's about service, but I think it's really understanding the customer and knowing that every single guest is different and wants different things. And when you can do that successfully, you will do well.
So sorry, Gail. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to add to that and say, I think that's the challenge for the travel agents as well, is there are so many different definitions of luxury now and luxury brands, and so many different, particularly on the hotel side, luxury brands. Keeping up on that part of the education and having the right partnership so that the opportunity for the agents to learn that so that they can point their clients in the right direction is particularly important. We spent a lot of time, for example, on wellness certification, and I know there's a wellness panel going on somewhere here, but you talk about so many hotels talk about the fact that they have a wellness program. That's great, but how do you define that wellness? I mean, my very dear friend, she defines wellness as I want to get up in the morning. I might walk on the treadmill a little bit. I want to lounge by the pool and go to the spa for most of the day and just be completely pampered. I define wellness as I like the little chimes going off at 5 a.m. so I can go hop up out of bed and go on my 10-mile hike and then come back and have, my little granola and then start my yoga class. And it's like I would be miserable sitting around a pool or sitting in a spa all day. But they're both wellness, right? And they both have something great to offer. And so I think the challenge of this is, as fast as these properties and these brands are expanding, the knowledge of making sure that there's a complete understanding and providing the right type of education so you match the right client to the right brand, I think is most important, because I don't think we can look at any property anymore and say, well, you say you're luxury. I mean, there's a clear definition if you're really not, but your definition of luxury at this property might be completely different than the definition of luxury there's a difference between a Rosewood and, an Amman property, right? And so you just have to be able to know those.
Well, it's also tailored amenities. I mean, you used to say everyone would have, we have a list of amenities, and in fact, many of the travel agency organizations here have hotel programs that offer certain special amenities attached with them. Mm-hmm. Ignacio sort of wrote the book on that, but now it's almost like you have to give a whole checklist and have people check what they want, and then get to the hotels and say, this is what my client wants, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Any other comments on hotels?
No, I mean, The only thing, James, we pair hotels with our products, so we match it.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. We'll use the Ritz-Carlton in St. Louis. Right. We'll use the Roosevelt. You can't go
back. Once you get off your ship or vice versa, you have to have the hotel partner that works with your cruises or with your river cruises, right?
And it's like Ignacio says, again, it comes back to time. It's flawless execution of transfers from the property to the vessel.
I want to turn now quickly to the final tours. And Rick, we'll start with you because obviously you are the tour representative on this panel. And you talked a lot about that already. How do you kind of orchestrate that tour experience? And you did mention that. And how does it differ from what it was in the past?
Yeah, I think in order to understand how it differs from the past is to understand what it was in the past. And what it was in the past is very different than it is today. When I first began running tours back in 1925, we had a very different guest. The typical guest would actually show up to get on a motor coach wearing a jacket and a tie. The women were dressed as if they were going to the opera, and this is how they would dress every day. And we had luggage, like we carried more bags than we carried people, about two bags.
Steamer trunks, right?
Steamer trunks, literally, because it was like that. And the definition of luxury was 3 full a la carte meals a day. We spent an average of 4 hours dining per day on tour, on average. And so a typical day back then would be to get up, have a full a la carte breakfast, which had to be at least an hour, right? And get on a motor coach so that we could sort of show them things out the window and they could rest up till we got to lunch, which would be about another hour and a half, and then get on the coach and snooze a little and listen to some commentary and look out the window and rest up for dinner in a very fine accommodation. That's what it used to be like. But today's traveler is much different because they're number one, they're active. And today's traveler says, don't tell me about the destination. I don't want to see it, I want to do it. Don't tell me about painting if you don't put a palette in my hand. Don't tell me about cooking if you don't let me cook. And so, we've had to evolve things, and now the next wave of evolution goes beyond that. It becomes a matter of personal choice. So technology is assisting because technology allows people to communicate on the fly so that we can know at any given time what a person wants to do at the moment. So rather than everybody now doing a unique experience together, they might have a different understanding of what that unique experience will be. Right. For instance, if you go to the Cinque Terre, some people may want to climb it, but some not that much. So some people now might want to bike in Europe, but not through Europe. So for those reasons, we've got to be able to tailor things not only for the group, but within the group. And really, we've got a mission right now called Land 100 as we prepare for our 100th year in business. And that's to be able to provide not only personal choice on water, but to provide it as well on land. And I think really that's the future.
Yeah, well, when I was hanging from the cliff on your heli hiking trip, I was thinking about the meal I was going to have that later that night. So I was sort of a throwback to the idea when I wasn't worried about falling, but that was another story. Ignacio.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple of things. We sell, I echo what Rick just said, absolutely, but we sell a lot of different brands in addition to Tauck, and I would say a few things that have changed over the last few years in terms of the whole upscale tour experience. And I would say number one is more opportunities for solo travelers. And this is, I think, a growing market that nobody really is paying any attention to. Abercrombie & Kent has had great success with their solo programs where they just take individuals and take them on a trip to New Zealand, which involves hiking and canoeing and kayaking and all the rest. But these are individuals. I mean, people don't realize we live in Manhattan, well, most of us do, and over 50% of the households in Manhattan are one person. And nobody is really marketing to that demographic, in my opinion. The other is family, which I think Tauck has done a phenomenal job with, but many other companies are doing great programs with children and teenagers where there are different things to do, where everybody can experience, say, Costa Rica or India or Japan or wherever, at a different pace with different opportunities and what have you. So I think in general it has become more flexible. I think there are more themed journeys or with special things to do. There's more access, and there's also a lot of what I call surprise and delight, where you may be traveling with a small group in Thailand, and all of a sudden there you are by the river, and everybody has the opportunity to, play and wash an elephant in the river, for example, in deepest, Chiang Rai. So something completely unexpected that you were not counting on and didn't dress for either, but yet it becomes probably the most memorable moment of your trip.
Yeah. Rick?
Yeah,
sorry?
Navin actually, Ignacio actually touched on two of the biggest trends that we're seeing right now. And probably the largest area of growth that we're seeing at Tauck are small group departures. And we'll double the number of small group departures that we have next year. And by small groups, the standard tour size group is about 38, and a small group departure is about half of that. The other area that, if you pick up any of our brochures, you'll see that there are specific departure dates that are marked in blue, and those are called solo departures. And those are departures where we've either eliminated the single supplement or we've greatly reduced it. And it's not only about reducing the single supplement, but it also kind of signals agents and other solo travelers that on that departure, there will be many other solo travelers so that nobody has to feel like they'll be alone.
To the opposite end, though,
Go ahead.
to the opposite end, I would say that we're seeing a lot of multi-generational requests, right? So then you have to make the tour something about everybody, because multi-generational travel has really become so much more prevalent, and we're spending so much more time with that as we start looking at the tours to book, that everyone's programs has evolved so that you can make it so that it fits not just the immediate family, but really going through the generational piece of it so that there's something for everybody on that trip.
Yeah, Navin? Yeah.
So I think one of the takeaways for you is that we talked about personalization, but an important element of that is choice and giving people a lot of choices and understanding what they want. When it comes to excursions, if you take the trend in fitness, you take the trend in people wanting a deeper understanding of where they are in an environment, etc., and combine those two, it's not shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that companies such as ours are now offering kayaking and snowshoeing in far-flung destinations like Antarctica and the Arctic. You do go on a hike to these places. But even if you take classic destinations, there are different ways in which you try to make people become part of the environment they're in or get a deeper understanding. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a cruise program that's around Sicily, and its theme is an Epicurean food and wine theme. But everybody's had a celebrity chef. Every town in this country has a celebrity chef, and we've all learned in America what wine is all about, considering 48 of our states produce wine. And we decided to take a completely different lens to this. And instead of giving people a walk through a market and all those kinds of things, and then the chef cooks something, we picked a Brooklynite who's lived in Sicily for the last 50 years and does nothing but write about the provenance of Sicilian food and how it got influenced by the Greeks and later the Turks as they conquered that, and how it's different from mainland Italy. It is a completely different way to understand that island. And we picked a partnership with Wine Spectator, so a local fellow can take you around and help you better understand what is still a farming community and not investment bankers producing wine, which is true of Sicily. We did another program that comes up this fall. It's along the coast, coming down from Vancouver into San Diego in partnership with Christie's. And when you come down that coast, yes, you do think of wine, but when you partner with Christie's, we can demystify how you collect wine and how you bid for that at an auction. Why? Because people want a different and deeper understanding of the experience. Many of them have already been to Napa and Sonoma if they come in from the East Coast or the middle of the country. And if they go into Los Angeles, it is probably the hottest market today globally for contemporary art. So you can have an expert take you and explain that to you in an artist studio or at Christie's and other museums there. And I think there's a lot of this kind of curation that allows people to come back with a far better understanding and transform themselves and become totally inspired by it.
Well, the word transform is something we can get into, but Ted, you
and I would say, James, because a lot of people may not understand this, even on a cruise, we cater to every, like Navin says, every menu. We have multi-generational. We found that out in the Pacific Northwest, particularly, our average age drops by more than 10 years. We have bicycles, we have jet boats, access, we have bicycles that we carry on board. We offer hang gliding, we offer fishing, and then we also offer theme cruises. So if you want to do a bourbon-themed cruise or
Yeah,
the
that was the one I
antebellum.
wanted to sign up for.
Okay, and then, or we go to the Kentucky Derby. I mean, you know, we've been in this business for quite a while. I was just comparing notes. I met Ignacio in 1992, which is quite a while ago. And back in the day when then only 18% of Americans even had a passport. We've doubled that now. We've got 36% because you have to have one to go to the Caribbean and Canada and Mexico. But that means 64% of Americans don't even have a passport, sadly. You know, so we try to offer all of those.
Well, even back in the 80s and 90s, Americans didn't drink as much wine, and now we're you know, become, you know, all over the country. Yeah. It's amazing.
So we, you know, it's incumbent upon us to have all of these offerings in a domestic cruise product.
I think there's one thing that needs a little bit of clarification, and it's often misunderstood, and that's what multi-generational travel is. A lot of times we think that multi-gen travel is for kids, and it's not. Mm-hmm. Really, what multi-gen travel is the creation of experiences that all generations can share together. And we learned this early on in the creation of Bridges, which is our multi-gen brand. And what we found is that, number one, you don't dumb it down for kids. Kids are smarter than you think. Number two, when it comes to fine properties and fine dining, the kids are more discerning than the parents. You know, these kids have been all over the world.
Don't tell them my kids are spoiled rotten after all these years in the
Exactly.
business.
So we thought we would get away with peanut butter and jelly and hot dogs and hamburgers for the kids. It's really mom and dad that are like craving a hot dog and a burger, but the kids are ordering lobster and filet mignon. And so don't think it's about that. The other thing is that you have to take a look at the multi-gen program. Is it a program that serves the customer who wants to be separated from their kids so they could have their own vacation? Or is it a program for families that don't have enough time with their kids and want to really spend that quality time building shared experiences with their kids? Mm-hmm. So they really fall into two different buckets. And so we're very careful to make sure that everything that we do can engage grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad, and the kids. The other thing that you have to understand
the kids
is that,
who are maybe in their 20s or 30s, right?
Exactly, and that's the other thing I was going to say is what's a family now? So we cater to a lot of single-parent families because it's tough to be a single parent on vacation, and we cater to families that have adult children and and anything in between. And the average age for us of our multi-gen program isn't little kids, but the average kid runs 14, 15, 16 years old. Although we do have kids that are as young as 3, but they're very well behaved and they've been everywhere. And so it all really works well.
I want to turn now to destinations, and we always have these ideas in our mind of certain destinations that qualify as luxury destinations. You know, it used to be, I'm going to go to Monte Carlo or Paris or these kind of things, but those are changing today. And how does a destination sort of attract more luxury travels? I mean, I can't tell you how many times. The director of Switzerland Travel is a good friend of mine, and they always are catering to the luxury segment. What must a destination do? And we don't have destination people on here, but we do have Ignacio, who does a lot of seminars on destinations. I mean, what is the luxury destination today, and what qualifies it for that?
I would say that the world is a luxury destination everywhere. There is really nothing keeping you as a luxury traveler to experience the world. But I think number one is authenticity. The destination has to be special or has to have a special character. Sometimes a destination is put on the map because there is a great place to stay. So for instance, 10 years ago, luxury travelers may not be thinking of going to Nicaragua, but then a little resort opened on the Pacific coast called Mucul, M-U-K-U-L, and all of a sudden Nicaragua was hot on the list. It was a phenomenal resort, hundreds of acres, golf, a mile-long beach, extraordinary accommodations, great dining, and all of a sudden Nicaragua was on the radar. The same thing with Bhutan. You know, people were very curious about Bhutan, but nobody could really go. The visa was a big hassle. But when you had brands like Como and Aman establish themselves in Bhutan, all of a sudden Bhutan is much higher on the radar of a luxury traveler.
But there's also out of the way, right? It's people. If you want to have that unique experience, and I'm the only person who's gone to there. Right?
Yes, there's that component, no question. And I think as travel sellers, we always have to be looking at the next horizon, because if you've been to Bhutan, so what's next? Well, there's Sikkim, there is Ladakh, there are other places in the Himalayas and the Karakoram that you can visit. It's going to take a lot more work, but you can do it. But yes, there's that component. Always be one step ahead of the curve, because I think with the luxury traveler, you have to surprise your customer, and you have to be bold, and you have to surprise people with things that they didn't necessarily expect.
Right.
I mean, also I think you need one-of-a-kind experiences while you are there, whether it's going to Vancouver or going to someplace in the outback in Australia. And I think again it's a much broader definition of what makes a destination attractive. And I think that we have to think up and out, and I think this travel show is a great opportunity. I mean, we just walk out the door and, the world is your oyster with all these possibilities that we could, conceivably sell. But that would be my definition.
There's an old...
I think the demand falls into 3 buckets. And if you understand that, you're going to have good business, whether times are good or bad. So look for trends, gaps, and expiration dates. So let me explain. Trends are obvious. If you're not following the trends, you're leaving money on the table, because trends are popular areas of demand. And gaps are a little tougher. Those are perceived demand. Those are areas that people want, but they're not sure how they're going to get. And the third bucket, destinations with expiration dates. Those are places that if they don't go now, they'll never see them the way they are today again. I mean, Cuba is a perfect example. If you don't go to Cuba now, you're never going to see the Cuba that you're really going to see. Other areas that have expiration dates, right now, Oberammergau will be a once in a lifetime for some of our population. They won't be here for the next Oberammergau. So those are areas that you can light a flame under people and say, you've got to go to these places now, because if you don't go, you're really going to miss the opportunity. It'll never come again.
And Ted? Sorry.
I was going to say, so destinations, I'm a little bit limited because we operate a U.S. flag, so I'm limited by geography. But,
But
James,
you're discovering more places on the river all the time. Yeah.
There's an old saying that with enough money, you can live well anywhere, right? So luxury, to Ignacio's point. But to me, luxury is really about, it has to be clean, it has to be safe, it has to have something interesting to do. And that's really...
Or unique to do something.
Or unique to do. The population that we sell to, and I say this all the time when I speak to our onboard staff and our Shorex people, they all have enough stuff. They're looking for experiences. And my pitch is always that, stuff diminishes over time. Right. Experiences, because we all have selective memory and we forget the negative and we tend to embellish our memories. So we're selling memories. And even for, the most wealthy that we have on board, it's that touch point of the friendly American waiter. I mean, on the turn days when there's tears in the dining room and it's the best experience ever, that's the experience they take home.
On board.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Gail. Yeah.
Well, I would say, back to the fact that the whole world is luxury. I would agree with that. I would say we started this whole session saying that you can't really define luxury because it's a personal definition, and that continues to make the role of the travel agent more and more relevant, because as the world becomes more and more global, you even during the discussion, you could care less if there's a gym in one of the properties. And
I like the idea of it.
But Ignacio, it's a must-have, and I think that it becomes very personal. And so, we've talked on both ends of the spectrum between experiential travel and transformational travel, and I think that transformational is a hard thing to hit each and every time. I mean, when you think about it, do you ask everybody who's come back from their trip, were you transformed?
There are definitely those.
There are, but you can't hit it every time. But you can certainly make it meaningful.
Right.
And I think meaningful and thoughtful is the role. Meaningful and thoughtful is the role of the travel agent, because so many times a client might call and think that they have a destination in mind, not even knowing most of these destinations, and that there's an incredible destination out there for them.
Yeah, Navin, I'm going to go to Navin and then Ignacio.
Okay. Yeah, so I would agree that there is no such thing as a luxury destination. The world truly is available to everybody, but how you actually travel to any of these places is very important, and the travel counselor's role over there is to make sure that they carefully assess the needs of the client. So if your client wants to go on an expedition, for example, but they like to be able to see native peoples Please send them to the Coral Triangle. For God's sake, don't send them to Antarctica. There are no native people over there. You know, it's understanding those aspects of it. It's also understanding fully well that there is a relevancy to even true and tried destinations like Paris and London, despite the fact that the boomer and the boomers' kids, the millennials, or whatever category of demography we want to hang on to, has been there. And there again lies the creating the surprise and delight or special access into places, or allowing these people the freedom to be able to experience some of those things. And finally, I just want to add, there are new horizons that mankind will always seek. You heard of the Virgin Galactic ship about a decade or so ago, and this morning I mentioned that we are building a true luxury icebreaker. And the reason we're building it is because there are people that do want to go to the North Pole. Yes, you can go on a nuclear-powered military repurposed ship, and there are companies operating those to the North Pole, but people do want to go there and go there in a more sustainable and more responsible way. And that's one of the reasons we're building it, because they want a better understanding of it. Yeah. And the same applies to other parts of the icy world down in Antarctica. And we're frequently asked, are you going to the South Pole? Well, you can't sail into a rock, so we're not. But we will be going into the Weddell Sea and Peter Island and other parts of it, again, to give people a better understanding. Combining this is our partnership with some scientific communities that'll live on board, that'll be resident, so they can conduct experiments and share some things with the traveling public to these areas.
Yeah, and Ignacio, you had...
Yeah, a couple of things. One, if you're in certain destinations and you are ahead of the wave, so to speak, if you're in deepest Bolivia or you're in Madagascar or something, obviously you're ahead of the curve and you're not going to have millions of other travelers to contend with. But if you're going to a destination that is incredibly popular, like say Iceland right now, you as a travel seller have to work twice as hard to be able to deliver Iceland in a special, meaningful, different way. Because the last thing that you want is to be standing in front of a waterfall with 8,000 tourists and be hit over the head with a selfie stick, which can happen. So you have to deliver a waterfall someplace else on the island so that the traveler can have that sense of wonder and not be overrun by a million other people. It takes more work, and you have to have the right resources and the right contacts, but it absolutely can be delivered. The same thing with the great cities of Europe, places like Barcelona. I mean, we're starting to worry about something called over-tourism, and in certain times of the year, I mean, Venice, you can go white water rafting down the Rialto with the crowds of people. So there is a way to do Venice, but maybe it isn't, you know, Piazza San Marco at 3 p.m. Maybe it's taking your clients to Torcello and having them see a monastery with the monk that runs the place, and deliver something that is very authentic. So it can be done no matter where you are, but you have to have the right resources.
Okay, I want to turn to well, Rick.
I'm just curious, how many people in the room are travel agents, by show of hands?
Yeah.
Okay, it's important to know. I just wanted to give you a couple of tips that you can really use in terms of selling.
Well, actually, and that leads right to the question.
Oh.
Okay. You see, you've teed up my question,
which
was how can agents better sell luxury travel and experiential travel?
Well,
what are the sales tools you'll need?
Well, I'm so glad you asked.
I'm so glad you asked.
So there's a couple of things. If you're a travel agent, we're throwing a lot of stuff out here, but you don't have huge marketing departments and you don't have time to do market research. So a couple of hints for you. Number one, if you want to know what's trending and how to fill those gaps, every year just look at what all of us have to offer that's new. It's new because we listen to the market. The market leads us. We don't lead the market. We listen to the market. And so we have to have our finger on the pulse of where the areas of growth is in terms of demand. So if you simply look at what's new, you're going to have a really quick list of what's in demand and what's hot. Number two, you don't really have to worry too much about destination. I've been in thousands of agencies over my course of my career, as many of my colleagues here have, and the vast majority of people that walk into your agency have some idea of where they want to go. So your job, for the most part, is not where they go, it's how they go. And I think both Navin and Ignacio touched on that. So you really have to deliver the how part more than the where part. That means that you don't have to be an expert on geography. What you have to be is an expert on your client and an expert on the means that they wish to travel in, with the budget that they can afford to travel. So those are really important things.
Okay, Ignacio?
A couple of things. Sorry, Gail.
We'll get to Gail next.
Yes, please. One is you have to affiliate with the right network. You cannot afford to be the Lone Ranger anymore, and you need to be with the right organization that has the right technology, the contacts, the cloud, the services and the relationships to plug you right in and be able to tap into that. Number two is you have to make a commitment. I mean, this really is the most important thing, because remember, the traveler is not buying the product or the destination, they are buying you. So you have to put all your heart and all your passion and all your soul into everything that you do, because you are the sort of the key link that is making all of this happen. I would also give you a couple of words of advice after being in this business over 40 years. Think like a financial planner. Nobody walks into an office of Fidelity Investments and say, I'd like to buy 100 shares of the Morgan Stanley fund. You sit down with a planner. They think about the future. Where are you going? What do you want to do? And we have to do the same with our clients and understand them and what their aspirations are, and be able to deliver and follow up with them and have these, you know, long-term relationships. And finally, is you have to really know your stuff. I hate to say this, but there are no shortcuts. So you really have to read constantly. You have to read what your clients are reading and things that your clients don't read. So maybe your clients read the New York Times every Sunday, but maybe you should read the Financial Times on the weekend, which is one of my favorite travel articles. Every Saturday and Sunday, there are at least 2 or 3 great travel articles. You wouldn't think of that, but it's kind of counterintuitive, but you can pick up a lot of great nuggets there. So
we're at the New York Times travel show. We can't mention the Financial Times.
We like both. We like both.
Okay, Gail.
Listen, here's what I would say is, I think, one, getting yourself into the right place is, and into the right organization is absolutely critical. I mean, we spend an inordinate amount of our time talking about what tools and resources we can deliver to our agents so that they can be more knowledgeable, and whether that's regularly having our different partners and our vendors come in to share what's new, to show what's new, to explain what's new, whether it's providing things like wellness training certification for our agents so they become experts in specific fields and what they understand. The only thing, Rick, I would say is I do think, you know what, you do have to be a destination expert, because when people come in and say they want to go someplace, they might not really want to go there. You might know a better place for them. I think it is up to that travel. For those of you in the room, I mean, for me, there's a difference between, particularly on the luxury side, being an order taker or a travel consultant, right? It's easy to book. If somebody says they want to go to Paris, it's easy to book them to Paris. But when you know the destination and you know what's there and you know what capabilities are there, you really are not just taking them from where they are to where they're going. You are providing that experience that is completely tailored to that individual. And so the purpose of fam trips, the purpose of being able to spend time with the various properties, the purpose of, I always tell our partners when they come in, they say, how can we sell more to you all? And I am quite clear, if they don't know you, they won't sell you. Because establishing those relationships for you as a travel agent is critical, because they're the one, you're going to need those relationships when you're dealing with the luxury client in order to tailor with their needs. And so, you know, I say this all the time to my team. If we're doing anything during the day that isn't working to help support the agent, help them grow their business, help them make more money, and help them serve their client better, we need to stop doing it. Put it down now, walk away from your desk and go do it, because the tools and the education that we work to provide the agents, otherwise it's going to be overwhelming for our agents to have to learn, and we need to be able to help them stay focused.
Yeah, I want to go to Navin and then I'll go to Ted. Navin?
So whether it's a wedding or whether it's a multi-generational trip or whether it's a simple holiday, people are seeking from you and experts' advice. Just as my colleagues here have said, financial planner or somebody that knows a destination. So you truly have to make yourself highly committed to becoming an expert. You can't become an expert in anything and everything. I think you've got to be very selective, and you've got to pick and choose not just destinations, but you've got to pick and choose suppliers. You've got to understand suppliers, whether it's hotels or whether it's tour operators or whether it's people operating cruise ships or riverboats or whatever it is. You have to have a level of expertise in it that is far greater. And the main reason for that is you've got to build trust with your client. They are entrusting their holiday with you. That is enormously important to them, and nothing will sour quicker than that trust than a complete lack of expertise all the way through.
Okay, Ted?
So, going last, I would underscore what my colleagues have said. Like Ignacio and Gail, you have to plug into the right network, but then you also have to plug into the right operators, like Navin was just saying. You have to have a quality operator. So, and that's the mantra that we live by. We turn our cruises on Monday. Every Tuesday morning, I get the quality scores. We're finding increasingly older Americans are concerned about healthcare access. It's a big deal traveling internationally. So,
Well, you're not that far away.
Pardon?
You're not that far away.
We're never that far away. I thought he was saying I was not that far away from being an older person and needing health care.
No, I didn't
that far away from. I'm not actually, James.
I'm in the same boat, so don't worry.
We're not that far away from U.S. healthcare. So, so what we started out saying, hassle-free. There's a lot of people that are just tired of the TSA pat-downs. They're tired of the long haul. They're tired of foreign exchange. They're tired of foreign language. So, but they're still active and they're still lifelong learners and they still want to travel. So it's like Gail was saying, you got to understand the client. You've got to understand the product. You've got to understand the distribution network. And all of the operators, all of the good operators offer webinars, seminars. We do that because, like Ignacio was saying, there are a lot of products out there, and it's really tough to be an expert on every one of them.
Okay, Ignacio?
I would add one last thing, and I would say ask a lot of questions. And I think that's something that we are all guilty of, that we think we have the answers right away. And I think if we spent a few more minutes interviewing our customers and really listening for what people truly want, which may not be what they said they wanted at the very beginning, but it's just as you probe down and you really drill deeper into the customer's passions and their interests, you will find that there is a lot there that can enrich the whole sale process and can make you more successful.
And I would also add, leverage your colleagues. We see this all the time at both Pro Travel and at Zell. We have a way for an agent to send out a note to everybody saying, can you help me? I have a client that's looking for a hotel on Palau with a certain kind of artwork, and leverage the knowledge of the rest of your colleagues, because while you can't be an expert in everything, there's somebody out there who probably knows a destination that you might be unfamiliar with, or knows a very particular nuance of the destination, and I think that's critical.
Okay, and Rick, we'll close that out, and then we're going to go into the last question.
In a world of endless choices, it's daunting, but there are 3 principles that have always been and always will be. Number 1, you have to sell the products that give you the greatest chance to sell again. Every time you make a sale, you have to ask yourself, did this lead to the next sale? And it's not just to that customer. Did the customer come back so enthusiastic that they're waiting to buy it again? Are they so enthusiastic
tell their friends,
that they're going to tell their friends, that they can't stop talking about it? So if they're not just satisfied, but if satisfaction is exceeded, if they can't wait to go again and they're talking about it, that's a product you want to look at. Once you find out what those products are, the next step is learn a little bit about the companies behind those products. What is their brand promise? And great brands are still around because they keep that promise consistently. And then finally, you have to learn specifically what it is about those products that create the repeat factor. And the last place you will ever find that information is in a brochure or on the internet, because everybody makes the same promises, but at a different price point and a different delivery. So you have to find out from the customers that are raving fans, tell me exactly what it is that you loved about it, and start collecting that information, and even collecting testimonials from your clients, and that becomes the real source of truth when you begin to sell to other prospective client.
I'm going to go into the last question here, and it really is, we've talked a lot about experiential travel, and that's where it's all been hot lately. Where is luxury travel heading in the next 10 years? What will change it, and how can we sort of prepare for that change? Anybody want to start?
I think a few ideas come to mind. I think the more choices there are out in the market, the more the sophisticated, savvy consumers will seek the advice of a travel professional. The more confusing it gets, the more hotel companies and cruise ships and tour operators, you need sound advice as time becomes more and more pressure. I think another big trend going forward will be wellness. We are all so completely overwhelmed. We wake up with 300 emails sitting in the mailbox, and the day hasn't even started. So we will see more and more travelers seeking holidays where they disconnect and unplug.
Yeah, but then when I disconnect and unplug and get a massage, there's still 300 emails in my box afterwards.
Yes,
so.
but you have to be present, James.
That's a whole separate
You have to achieve
issue,
enlightenment.
It's a corporate issue.
And I would also say there is also going to be a great focus on active and adventure travel, because I think one thing we have learned is that yes, the boomers are getting older, but the boomers are not going away anytime soon. And they want to be active, and they want to explore, and they want to discover, and they want to adventure. So, I mean, don't be surprised if you're in some Galapagos cruise and there's a couple that are 90 and 92 years old, and they're going on the Zodiacs and running around like everybody else, and that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, our population is aging, so I would say wellness, active adventure, and more destinations opening, and I think it's just incredibly exciting ahead. I can't wait.
Okay, next. Anybody want to?
I think the use of technology is going to really be an important aspect of luxury. I mean, you all hear of geocaching. People are now touring that way and discovering new and different things through it. That's just one example. I would agree with Ignacio that adventure and discovery, those kinds of exploratory types of trends are going to be very strong. We are seeing great strength in them, obviously, as is evident from ordering 5 more ships. The third area that I think that will continue, that will manifest itself as a big piece, is to continuously push the envelope and go to destinations that previously people haven't been to. And last but not least, I think there'll be a strong trend towards nostalgia. And that could mean any number of things. That could mean going back to Paris and staying at the Bristol, as he was talking about. That could mean going back on an ocean liner and actually enjoying solitude and a nice book for 5 days across a body of water. That could mean a lot of different ways in which people travel, including rail and being driven around in cars and thus and such.
Yeah, and nostalgia. Ted, what do you see the trends going?
I can't predict the future, actually.
Sure we can.
We're living in the here and now, and the here and now for us is we can't keep up with the demand for domestic travel, for domestic river cruise travel. We are sailing full. We are almost largely sold out for 2018. We're publishing 2019 on the 1st of February, and we just can't get enough capacity.
Yeah, well, in river, 20, 30 years ago was not considered a luxury product. Now
but
it's
changed now.
It's changed a lot, so that's a big trend. Gail, where are we heading?
I would add, or I would agree on the whole focus that technology could change an awful lot of the future of travel in terms of what's considered luxury and where people are going. But I also think, with no destination in mind, people, I think what this last decade has really shown is that people are finding travel more meaningful. They're finding it as a way to connect somehow, some way, to something that's incredibly important to them. It's not just a trip to go see a site or a trip to go see something new, or it's really, and it's beyond experiential too. It's actually something that is very meaningful for them, and that's going to change over time as we keep evolving. I think the one thing that has been great, and I said this earlier, is at the pace of the rest of the vendors, the partners, the destinations, the properties to evolve has actually been fairly quick. There's been
So the market is reacting.
The market has reacted really well, and some have pushed that. I mean, some have actually been the one that has pushed the market forward. But in terms of being able to meet those needs, the reaction has been fairly quick. What I don't see is us falling backwards. People are looking for ways to connect in whatever it is that they're doing.
Fantastic. And Rick, I'll let you close it out here.
Yeah, well, I'm going to predict what isn't going to change in the next 10 to 20 years or beyond that. And those are the fundamental drivers that create the change. Number one, we need to create unforgettable experiences. We did yesterday, we have to today, and we need to tomorrow as well. We have to also exceed expectations. And expectations are constantly changing, so we have to listen hard to our clients to understand those expectations and then go a step further to exceed them. And in order to do that, we have to be dynamic companies that constantly reinvent ourselves. And then finally, we have to provide the best quality and value, because people do not go on vacations to save money. They stay home to save money so that they can have a vacation that creates a lifetime of memories.
Thank you. Well, listen, I thank you for all attending and being here. Let's give other speakers a hand. And you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James.
Sir, see you again next